Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to have a taster menu of short snippets to whet your appetite for more. These are canopies and not main courses. To be fully satisfied, you need to read the book for yourself. So I'm here to challenge all the speakers to produce a single bite wonder in their allocated time. So I'm going to start by passing the platter to Sally Cave.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to start. I'm Sally Cave. I'm head teacher at Guildford Nursery School and Family Centre, and along with my colleagues Chris Pascal and Anne Denham, sort of founding members of the Froebel Partnership. The Froebel Partnership we came together through Tina Bruce's introductions back right at the beginning of 2020, just as COVID was striking the UK and across the world, of course. It's been a truly wonderful coming together of people with shared visions, shared values, and shared Froebelian principles. We came with a variety of expertise and knowledge in Froebel's principles and pedagogy, but actually we've all worked in the spirit of his principles from the word go. I've always believed that Froebel's principles are absolutely crucial to the way we work together as adults, just as they are crucial for young children. And it has been an absolute joy and an honour to work with the Froebel Partnership, funded by the Froebel Trust for between 21 and 24, because we work together using the principles of Froebel to guide our work, to inspire us, and to just be the way we worked with each other in that absolute mutual trust and respect. So I think that is, we span from one side of the world to the other. It has been additional work, but as I said, it has always been a joy and an honour because it is such a true partnership inspired by Froebel's principles. And I'm now going to hand over to Chris.
Thanks, Sally. I'm here as the book editor for the EC Era Praxis series, but also joint author of this fantastic book, which I hope you're all going to go out and buy. Tonight we're launching our book, which tells a deep story of joy and collaboratively work in partnership together. And you can see the authors on that book represent a lot of voices, and there's a lot of voices behind those voices. I just wanted to quickly say that locating our book in this series, the Ethical Praxis series, was a very considered choice. It's a series from the European Early Childhood Education Research Association, ECERA, which has at its heart ethical praxis, ethics and praxis, which is reflection and action and pedagogy together. It wasn't research and then practice, but a fusion of research and practice, but also a process that, as Sally said, fused together values, which the Froebelian approach gave us that cohesiveness. We operated very ethically around voice and participation and disclosures, and very distributed power. There was no hierarchy amongst us, I don't believe, and we worked hard to be a democratic community, and I think it's really important in today's world. We talk about democracy a lot. So we tried to distribute power, live out an ethical intentions, and to make our values very explicit, and to do that as a community in practice. And the book tells the narrative of us being and becoming a Froebelian community of practice. And the book is only one of the things we produced. We'll be sharing with you some other things too. So, fantastic to launch that tonight in the company of everybody here. I'm now going to hand over to Helen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So I'm Helen Lyndon, part of the Correct team and also very much part of the Froebel Partnership team as well. If we can move to the next slide, I will tell you a little about the structure of the book. That's lovely, thank you. The book is split into 3 parts for you all. The first part, chapters 1, 2 and 3, gives you a real understanding of our collective understanding of Froebel. It talks about those philosophical underpinnings of the work that we are doing. It then talks about the kind of the history really and the tradition of Froebel, particularly in our locations. We are a sort of a dual-centred project, if you like. In part 2 of that, we then get a chapter that explains our methodology. Chris has just talked to you about that praxis, that praxeological approach. So we've got chapter 3 that's dedicated for those of you that want to know the how did we go about it, what did that look like. Part 2 of the book tells the story of actually the time that we've taken over this piece of research So chapters 4 and 5 and 6 actually take us through the 3 layers that we've undergone. So we talked about outdoors, and you'll get a sense of that as we go through today. We talked about learning outdoors, we talked about the gifts and occupations, and then we talked about the layers of play, and we had those 3 kind of layers of focus through the project. And then the third part of the book brings you portraits of practice, so it gives you some real life examples of what did this actually look like for us in practice. And then we have some wider reflections, hopefully some implications that you can all take forward. So hopefully now a bit of a sense of how we all came together. I can hand over to Chris and Anne. And the next slide, please.
Thank you. And we're going to, in this first part of tonight's webinar, is to do something isomorphic. You can look that word up if you like, but we're going to reflect one of the outcomes in the we're going to tell our story through using the 4 lenses of our reflection with guidance tool, more of which later. The first lens that we look at practice through is looking at the context in which the practice happens, and really thinking about the physical space, the environmental space, the time, how the practice is an ongoing long-term thing. We work together for 3 years, so the seasonal passing of that. We're going to tell that story of our journey as a group of co-researchers, co-educators, co-writers. We're going to tell that story through those 4 lenses. Here's the first one, and I'm going to hand over to Anne, my lovely friend from New Zealand, who's going to add a little bit more to this. So this first lens is, how on earth did we, very busy people, find the space and the context and the place when Anne's on the other side of the world and we're not all in one location either? How did we find the time and the space and the opportunity to write this book collaboratively together? Because we did write it collaboratively. We didn't go away like hermits to a cave and write our little bit and then pop it in. That we had lots and lots of dialogue around that. And interestingly, when we first started the process, as Sally said, COVID had struck. So we had to be apart. But one thing COVID taught us was how to connect online. And without the online thing, you'll see the photograph in the middle is Anne in her study in New Zealand, I guess. But the photograph of us all around the table, that's Anne at the end of the table on screen. So we managed, using the technology, to come together. Rarely we met together. Even those of us in England, we met regularly online and had online conversations, and they were regular and deep, and they enabled our relationships together. We came together once in the wonderful location of Lisbon at the ECERA conference, and then the group of us minus Anne, when we got serious about the book, and I have to own up I was the one driving it, we corralled everybody together at Tony Bertram's house, and we lived together for 4 days. And we spent the time together writing and talking and writing and talking. It was the most amazing experience, because I think in that 4 days we produced the first draft of the manuscript. But it does take time and it does take intention. But when you have wonderful colleagues and wonderful material that we'd gathered through our observations and our documentation of practice, it was an absolute joy to write. And you were at a distance, but I hope you felt like I did, that you were deeply connected throughout the process. Would you like to share some of that?
Oh, kia ora, Chris. Kia ora, Maioha. Warm greetings on a chilly morning from New Zealand. It is really interesting just reflecting on what Chris has talked about, because it was always, we were in our woolly jumpers while you were all in your summer clothes. So it was that real consciousness of the difference in time and in seasons, but it didn't stop us no matter what. We connected. It's so much better connecting in real life, as you all will know, but I think we were so fortunate just in the timing of our connection that for me, although it's still technically a bit of a challenge to get online, sometimes, as we can see, we have some challenges with presenting, but yeah, it's been a very, very special relationship that I'll value forever. So thank you. And I'm going to hand over to the next team, who are...
That's me and Sue next. We can have a look at the next slide. The next lens through which we reflect on this and our developing community of practice is that of actors, actions and relatedness. And actually that follows beautifully from what Anne's just talked about. The connections, there were some connections within the wider team that were established, but certainly not between the entirety of the team. We've spent a long time actually now, 4 years, in the company of one another, in person where we've been able to make it work. And then Chris has obviously talked already about that intensive writing period that we experienced. I think it's fair to say that we all approached our writing very differently. We all bring very different levels and different expertise to the table. You can see me to the right there with my headphones on, shutting myself off from the world and kind of finding that little space of one's own in order to do some writing. But we all very much were able to also come together, get to know one another and develop the relationships. Sally and I would often go for a walk in the afternoon. There was definitely quite a lot of coffee, and you can possibly tell by the bottom left table. There was also a lot of food, Jane, following on from your starter for 10 this evening. Sue, would you like to introduce yourself and add to that?
Yes, definitely. I'm Sue Bennett and I work with the Prep team. I've been privileged to be part of this journey as well. Definitely out of my comfort zone, but I will say that this weekend that we all had together, this long weekend, was an opportunity, as Helen said, to really get to know people. And even though Anne was over the other side of the world, she didn't feel as if she was over the other side of the world. She felt as if she was actually there with us. And I think, what Helen just emphasised, it's an opportunity to get to know people as people and really get to know bits and pieces about them. And knowing that Tina liked to work down in the summer house quietly, and I could be found in the conservatory. And yes, Helen was out in the sun, but we all had different ways of working. But there was something really nice about coming together and sharing it and shaping things and listening to each other and really valuing everybody's contributions and moving things forward. And I think that's the kind of thing that came across to me, that everybody felt valued and equal in the process. Anything else, Helen?
No, that's good for me. We're handing over to Sally and Tina.
Hello, I'm Tina Bruce, and I have just felt so privileged to be part of this whole research project. The feeling of democracy in it has just been so strong and so powerful. You can see in this slide the images of lots of lovely children. Now, the thing is, each of these slides has actually got in it the layers of play. Play's not static, it flows. And children might move between the different layers in one play scenario. But play always has foundations, and that involves exploring with the senses, body, movement. Foundation play is present, even in every layer of play. It's in every image in this slide. Let's have a look at the little girl with the slide, with the pram. She's illustrating a layer of emerging imitative play. She's having seen adults with babies, and she's enhancing this, developing a scene of literal pretend play with characters in it and narrative. And the boy with the map is rearranging real life. He's making a scene of deepening imaginative play, because play's not linear. It's got layers, as you'll find when you start looking at the reflection with guidance tools and in the book, Being and Becoming. So if I could hand over to Sally.
As an educator, I'm just thrilled that there's just so many children and their families and their educators throughout the book. In the top left, you'll see Harry. The whole of chapter 5 is devoted to him. The rest all appear in chapter 6, which is all about the layers of play. And I think you'll get through that chapter the vital role of the adult with regards to the educators and the families. They just shines through. And every chapter you will meet children from England and New Zealand, their families, their educators. And we really all of us just use the children's stories to exemplify our learning over the lifespan of the Froebel Trust funded project. So I'm just, thrilled that, these children are coming to life in our book. And I'm going to hand it over to, if we could have the next slide, please. And Anne's going to join me on this one. So You'll meet a few of our co-authors in a minute. So transformations, this is lens 4, when we really consider what the so whatness, for, if you like, for the children or for the setting or for the adults. And so here we're talking about adults, and a lot of the authors, the co-authors, are educators. And I think this is what I meant when I was talking at the beginning about a partnership. It was a true partnership, and of equal partnership. And as Chris said, there wasn't a hierarchy. And who better than to write about the children than the actual educators who work with those children and families? So yes, it was a lot of additional work, but actually I think, and hopefully they will add to this, that actually seeing our work with children in print and in our own words is transformational. It adds to the professional pride, professional well-being, and just absolute job satisfaction, really. There were definitely personally times then I thought, I just can't do this, I'm just going to ditch this. But oh my goodness, I am so proud and so pleased that I never did. So that's, I just think the transformations are huge and ongoing. Anne.
Thank you, Sally. Yes, teachers, our kayaku, our colleagues that took part in this, because like you said, Sally, there's no way we could have done this on our own. And I think for all of us, we would acknowledge that time and space were key for those transformations. We've got a beautiful whakatauki, a proverb that we use in New Zealand, he tonga te wā, which is time is precious. And so for us to have that time does take time. Thank you.
And if we move on to the next slide, please, and Helen and Sue.
Thank you, Sally. Thanks, Anne. Yes, so well, Anne's just talked about proverb that she shared with us, and actually one of the aspects of transformation for the whole of the Froebel Partnership came actually through our understanding of the importance of the past and honouring that past, and in particular the phrase, I walk backwards into the future with my eyes fixed on the past, gave us a real sense of understanding where we'd all come from as part of the team and the expertise that we brought, but actually then being able to translate that into the educators, the broader settings, the children, and the whole partnership really, and a focus very much through transformations on flourishing, not potentially looking at just traditional notions of transformation, but thinking about a broader idea of flourishing. Sue, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add to that is it was also about flourishing on a personal level as well as that kind of whole team level. It's the most effective kind of professional development, I think, for all of us as kind of individuals, really. I think it made us think about, as Helen said, that reflection, which I think is sometimes as practitioners, we don't give ourselves the time to do and don't think about those transformations because there's a tendency to rush on to the next thing. So I think it is about giving us time and thinking about how has it transformed us, how has it transformed children. So I think that was the very important part.
And if we could look at the next slide, please. So this is very practical. You'd be very welcome to a face-to-face book launch. The QR code will take you to the form filling this in. The important things you need to know are there's an on-site car park and refreshments would be served. You don't need to come at, for the whole time. Come when you can. Just please let us know in advance, by filling that form in. And you'll be very welcome. We look forward to seeing some of you in person. Chris, and the next slide, please.
Okay, so that's a kind of story of our relationship and our developing community and what we want to do tonight. And I hope we've inspired you about collegial work and being a community, a Froebelian community, and being and becoming one. We're handing on the baton tonight, and there's the book, but there's also an available resource, free downloadable on the Froebel Partnership website called Reflection with Guidance, which was a bit of a take on the Froebel thing, freedom with guidance. But we really value and are promoting the notion that educators need to think. You need time. We've talked about time to think. But for me, thinking occurs in dialogue with others. And it's others make me think, and I hope I make others think. But the thinking together is much more powerful and transformative than when you think alone. So we've developed this tool which is based around Froebelian practice called Reflection with Guidance. It has 4 lenses. We've illustrated those to you. The first lens, when you're thinking about and dialoguing about practice with children, is looking at the context, the environment in which that practice happens. Nothing happens in a vacuum. The second one looks at who's in the scene and how are they relating to each other. And by that, I'm also increasingly conscious of the physical environment is an actor and influencing what goes on, more of which later. Then we look at what Tina and Sally talked about, the network of learning, with particularly foregrounding the centrality of play and trying to unpick and really look in a deeper way at how children play and how play transforms the inner to the outer and helps children in today's world flourish and become who they are. And then the fourth lens we encourage you to look at is the transformations lenses. So what happens as a result of that? What shifts, what changes, what's going on that's dynamic and movement? And around those 4 lenses in this Reflection with Guidance tool is a set of prompts or provocations to help you think when you're looking at your own practice or dialoguing your own practice as a team, to become a little bit more reflective and aware of what's going on. It not only enables you to move your practice forward, but it also amazes. I always think when you look and observe like this in a deep way and reflect on it, you see the amazing job that you're doing. It's really a celebratory tool as well as a provocative tool to say what next. So the Reflection with Guidance tool is another kind of outcome of or output, if you like, but it really models that really importance of asking those critical questions about what you do and dialoguing together as a group of professionals and educators and researchers. Because I think all educators see those 2 things as fused, but nothing is possible without that deep reflection on, in and for practice. And this is a lovely accessible tool to do that. Okay, thank you. So we're going to kind of be using this tool for the rest of the session. So I'm now going to hand back to Sally again.
Yeah. If you just go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
And click it, if you click through. So this is just a bit more of an exemplification of the 4 lenses that Chris has already just talked through. So if Mariana, you could just click through the next, and that's it. I'll just leave that there and the last one, please. Thank you. I'll just leave that for you because Chris has actually talked through these, so I don't feel the need to talk through anymore. You can just have a read of those, because now we're going to stop sharing the presentation. We're going to show you a little film clip, and then we are going to actually exemplify our Reflection with Guidance tool. It's how we it's how we work together over the years. And the book is sort of, as we've talked about, is written all about this Reflection with Guidance, but sometimes you just need to see it in practice. The film was filmed by Anna, who's going to talk about it in a little bit, on her work phone. There is nothing, it's just typical practice. It's not the most professionally filmed thing because it is just done in practice. So I'm going to attempt to share this now. Okay, push.
Push. I'm Anna. Hello, good evening. I'm Senior Key Person at Guildford Nursery School. So I'm going to focus on lens 1, which is the context of the video. So obviously it was raining. So lens 1 is the context. It's what is the season. So it was early spring. It was raining. Obviously the children were wearing rain suits. It was in our main garden with paths and grass. Because in lens 1, it says about the terrain, the shape, the size, the location. Our garden can get waterlogged at times, so it was quite fun because we have lots and lots of puddles that form. So obviously I was there to observe, and I gave the babies time to explore, and they splash and find new puddles. Obviously the garden is open from 9:30 to 11:30, and we have a free flow. The children are able to have free flow so they can use the garden when they like. Obviously, all these different things on the lens are really helpful when I'm observing and writing learning stories to the children. All our team use the Reflection with Guidance toolkit for that reason, for that thing. So yes, it's just really quite a nice thing to look at, and it gives you little prompts of, you know, where to go. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Sarah and I'm from New Zealand. I'm just going to use this context as well. Outside is where we want to be in all weathers across the globe, whether it's in the UK or whether it's in New Zealand and everywhere in between. And we all share that love of the outdoors. Watching the children today, they have on appropriate clothing to experience a winter's day outside. My assumption is the season, because as we all know, it could be any time of the year at the moment when it's raining. The message the children receive is that this is a place for them to explore. The outdoors is waiting for them and they are all set to go outside. The natural environment that flanks the path contrasts with the man-made concrete surface. The children's play involves the puddles that have been captured on the hard surface of the concrete, and these contrast to the wet path with no puddles. There may have been puddles on the grass too, but they may have vanished already into the earth and not be visible from the children's perspective. The children remain on the path in contrast to exploring the waterlogged areas, and I'm thinking of a story in the book called Muddy Puddles by Patria in New Zealand. The puddles seem to be 100% focus of the play, and the children are able to explore them at their own pace, backwards and forwards and back. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Helen.
Right. Having a look at lens 2, which is actors and relationships. Sally, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, yes, I love this one. I love all the 4 lenses actually, but I really like this one because it talks about how the actors, and that's the children, the educators, everybody really, any person, how they relate to each other. And I love looking at that. It's such a key Froebelian thing, isn't it? Relationships matter. And you can see there that those babies are in the company of their trusted adult. They are completely, you know, you can see the babies relating to each other and communicating actually, and also the adult Anna there is beautiful, supporting their development and their learning, and you get that real freedom with guidance, isn't there? You know, absolute freedom to explore with just the right amount of guidance. And one of the things I really like about this lens is that we really look at the adults. And so often we bypass that, and educators are some of the worst really about saying, oh, that child is doing that well, or that child has done this, but actually it only ever happens because of the adult. And I think valuing the adult is so important. Helen.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, Sally, because you can see the children glancing up and kind of referencing their kind of safety and their adult in that way, as well as looking up and referencing one another in that secure way. Yeah, I think the only thing I'd like to add to that is that when you watch that little snippet of video, and we don't all have the luxury of having video to sit back and watch from time to time, but you get a real sense of the relationships and that relatedness that came before, and almost a sense of what might happen afterwards and where the children might take it next. So you really can feel that kind of connection, can't you, between the 3 of them in that space, even though we never actually see Anna, we just hear that she's there and get a sense of her in the video. So yeah, let's hand over to Tina and Chris to talk about lens 3.
Lovely. It is such a delight, isn't it? And I'm going to focus on lens 3 with play. And you could see in the film the children, they were running and tiptoe splashing, exploring the puddles, lots of lovely movement. It's all signalling foundation play. And we need to give such value to foundation play because it is the foundation of play, and we never lose it the whole of our lives. It is foundational. They're imitating each other, they're following each other. There's a lot of lovely joining and parting, turn taking, using the adult's language accompaniment to start and stop, ready, steady, go, lovely rhythm, pace, all things that we look for in the reflections for guidance, and laughing together, a lot of fun. And actually, I just love seeing some dance-like formations going on there. And these show us the emerging imitative play. Now, I know Chris is going to talk a little bit about the context of this play.
Thanks, Tina. And yeah, I'm fascinated all of us interact with each other, the humans, and you've got the Anna, the educator there, and you've got the two children, and there's a dynamic and interaction between those three. But they're also in a relationship through their play with the non-humans, you know, the water, the wind, the light, the sound, the splish splash, and how the educator, I keep coming back to Anna, the educator, how skillful she was in scaffolding that. So she was really encouraging them through the splash splash, which was repeated quite a lot, but it was leading their exploration, and the ready steady go, leading them to go and move down the path. So she was framing. And the other thing was she was close, but she wasn't too close. She wasn't interfering. The children still had that freedom to really explore in that foundational way you talk about, Tina, the experience and just the sensory nature of that experience. That first-hand experience is really important to establish the foundations of play, and that's what those children were getting, scaffolded by a very skillful educator. So yeah, the network around that little incident is very complex actually when you think about the physical environment and the relationships that are going on there, and they're very dynamic and pacing too. That's what makes using these lenses so fascinating. You're right, Tina.
Yes, and play just isn't linear. As you say, it's very complex. It's got these different layers that come into action at very different moments, often all in the same one play scenario. So you get different layers operating in the different children, all involved in the same play. And an individual child will often draw on the different layers during the different moments in the play. So it flows, play flows. It's absolutely thrilling to me when I look at the website with the Reflection with Guidance tool and getting that lovely depth when you read the book, Being and Becoming. It all helps with the complexity of what we're seeing here with the children.
I need a t-shirt that says, play, it's more complex.
Yes. So it's over to Sue and Helen.
Thanks, Tina. So yes, the fourth lens through which we consider the video is that of transformations. And there's obviously that's such a very, very short window of time for those children where we can see in terms of their well-being and their involvement in their activity, we can see and sort of comment on the transformation in that respect, and perhaps in Anna's professional confidence to be able to let the children have that space. Sue, do you want to take that a bit further?
Yeah, I see this very much as a kind of a summary of the lenses that have gone before, really. It's that kind of so what, you know, we've looked at those things. Do we ever give ourselves that opportunity as practitioners to slow down and just think, well, let's look back and reflect on what we've seen? And like you've just mentioned, Helen, the mental and physical well-being of those children, their kind of enjoyment, their sense of flourishment, and how it kind of links in terms of that self-reflection and that sort of self-activity. Because I do think very much now as educators, we do tend to rush on to the next thing. And I think it's only by standing back that we can really think, well, what are we going to do next? What are we going to use to create that future? And that's about looking back about how we as adults may have transformed that knowledgeable adult there and what difference it's made for those children. So I think that's kind of, for me, you know, really important. And you can see that kind of through that video clip.
Now we're going to move on to the benefits of being and becoming a Froebelian community of evidence practice using the Reflection with Guidance. So Angharad and Sarah are going to talk about the benefits of using Reflection with Guidance in practice. I believe, Angharad, you're starting.
Yeah. Hello there, I'm Angharad Gilmore and I'm a senior teacher here at Guildford Nursery School. So yes, on a practical level, we've used Reflection with Guidance termly in our staff meetings, where educators come together. We might share a video, just like the one Anna shared. We might show a series of photographs. We might even look at a learning story. And together, we like to use it and reflect as a team. My favourite way to do this is actually to include all members of staff from the baby room upwards. Often they've got their own context, their own understanding of a child from when they were younger. And that can really help us to see the child's journey, their learning, and development, and obviously importantly to look at the transformations that child has made. The important thing really for us is to have it scheduled, and with Sally, she really believes in this toolkit, and having that scheduled in our termly staff meetings has been really important. So it's actually given the time it needs, because it does take time to talk. And obviously when we look at photographs or a video, we can talk about it for over an hour, can't we? We can talk about it for such a long time, because everyone has their own perspectives, their own understanding of that child and their play. So in terms of us educators, it's helped with the questions through the lenses. It's helped really to develop the language, and staff have become confident embedding it in their daily practice. As Anna mentioned earlier, we're able to use them in our learning stories. We can articulate our practice better through Froebelian principles and values. And again, looking at the layers of play document, that's really helped educators to see how play emerges, how it develops, and thinking about all the stages that children go through. So it's definitely led to transformations for the children as well as us educators. And finally, it's developed a deep level of reflection for all of us educators. I'm even using the toolkit as part of my master's dissertation as my primary research method. So we're all really behind the toolkit, and we use this a lot in our work. I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to discuss it from a New Zealand perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what this tool does, it gives intentionality to educators to really think deeply about what children are learning and thinking about what's happening in their play and why. So I think those are those really big questions, and we do need to take time to think about them, the what and the why, and also then the what next. Margaret Carr from New Zealand, she gave us here notice, recognise, respond, and later on was added revisit. And this reflection tool really places emphasis on the revisit part at a whole deeper level. Until now, I kind of feel that reflection or revisiting has been underutilised, and it's something that kaiako, that's our word for educators, we do that instinctively. So sometimes it becomes invisible because educators do it all the time. So intentionality is the key. And this tool gives, to quote our Froebel, visibility to the invisible. So it makes visible kaiako's thinking and their knowledge, and it makes the inner outer and the outer inner. It's a slow pedagogy for educators too, so slowing down the process of thinking and then taking the possible course of action. In the same way, learning and exploration is slowed down for children. So the tool is twofold, providing opportunities for transforming learning for children, but also transforming learning for kaiako, for their pedagogical thinking and growth. By drawing our attention more deeply to thinking about what we're seeing through observing and making those observations count. So more than just watching children playing, but actually really stopping and thinking about it. So using the tool, this occurs collaboratively, where views, ideas, opinions are all valued, and the tool provides that framework for those discussions. So you've kind of got something to follow rather than it just disappearing or getting off track. For New Zealand kaiako, this highlights, as Norma Roberts said in her reflection, how closely aligned Froebelian principles are to our curriculum Te Whāriki and Te Ao Māori. There's an emphasis on the holistic development, play, relationships, freedom with guidance, autonomous learners, and the importance of nature in the lives of our tamariki, our children. The tool really emphasises place, and it's so incredibly important. We call that tuanga waiwai, and it means the place where you stand, and it evokes a very deep emotion, knowing your place. So knowing the place where you stand on in our work, and this also makes it equally important that, by contrast, if we're thinking about Froebelian terms, knowing where you came from. So to leave with a whakatauki, poi poi a te kakano, kia puawai, nurture the seed and it will blossom. Thank you. I'll pass on to Anne and Sally.
Kia ora, Sarah. I don't think there's anything further to add to what Sarah has shared with you. You can hear and feel the impact that the Reflection with Guidance tool has had on kaiako and on our practice in New Zealand. And I think part 3 of our book, really illustrates that when you read the stories from our kayak or from our educators, but also our colleagues in the early years sector that have also contributed. Just, I guess, for me, it's how to being our context being completely different in many ways, but very much the same as our colleagues in the UK. And I think the only thing I'm going to add again is about time and this. So for us, it was really important to connect to Te Ao Māori and our Mātauranga Māori concepts. And again, wā it comes to mind for me. So that's about the concept of both space and time. And it's less about that linear sequence of events and rather about how relationships to people and places are formed, maintained and developed. And I think for me, Sally, that's, if I think about our relationship working together 15 years ago, Sally and I were working in Morecambe Forest for over 15 years. And look, who would have thought we would be writing a book and part of such an amazing community. So it's, the tool has, I guess it illustrates the journey and those relationships and the importance of all of those things and how it connects for me from a Te Ao Māori perspective.
And I think just to add, as a leader of an organisation, I think the reflection with guidance and this whole way of working values the hard to measure. And I think that's absolutely key. I also think it's a Froebelian way of working. Adults have the freedom to research their own children in ways they want, and they guide each other. And there's no hierarchy to that. But equally, they own their own learning, because they've chosen what they're bringing to reflect upon, and actually in groups they're owning their own learning, their own development, and therefore their own improvement and the quality of improvement of the setting, either their own team, the provision, the pedagogy, it's owned. And I would just suggest that it is the most impactful professional development that I've ever been involved in. And I'm now going to hand over to Chris and Helen, who are going to talk about the benefits to researchers and academics.
Right, Helen, you're going to start, I think.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I think just as kind of Sally's talked about that transformative nature of it for her setting, and you've certainly got that sense from Anne as well in New Zealand, I personally feel the same about the research that we undertake at CREC. Being involved in such a long-term research project really has changed our ways of working. We were actually all researchers. It was about a really collective and shared responsibility for that research, and actually a passion in the research. It started off with fewer educators involved in that first year, and then as momentum gathered, more and more of the educators were very happy, delighted in fact to be involved. And it's particularly satisfying to have Angharad share with you all that she's now using reflection with guidance as a research tool for herself as part of her own studies. So it's definitely been a transformative research tool for us at CREC. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I love evidence. I love data. I love information, and practice is data. It's evidence, and it enables us to think, and it enables us to know, and it feeds our actions. But I suppose I'm a researcher now. I come out of practice. But the tool became a frame for us, all of us in that community, wherever we were coming from and whatever level of professional development we were at personally, to engage in an equal dialogue together about something we all cared about and were interested in and fascinated by. And the tool really facilitated that professional dialogue. But we were tasked as a research organisation to document and research and evidence the practice that we were developing over the 3 years. And I've already said how complex it is, just that little snip. There's pages of data just in that one little snip. And we had photographs, films, observations, reflections, diaries over a 3-year period, an absolute mountain. So you have to be a researcher. Researcher is just about being systematic in the handling of information and rigorous in the way you interpret that data. But we had to have a frame to do that with. And the frame was created, it was this reflection with guidance tool. The 4 lenses with the prompts is a really good analytical tool. And as Helen said, we were all researchers and we all needed something, a framework to analyse what was going on. And the 4 lenses with the prompts in each of them is a really systematic way to do that. And it also enabled us to interrogate the big data set that we'd all collected together, which was mountainous, beautiful. And a lot of it's on the website for you to look at. But you can't just, how do you make sense of all of that? You know, that narrative qualitative data. You've got to have a way of organising that. So the context, the transformations, the network and the relation became an analytical tool, ways we could look at the data, cut the data, make sense of the data, look for patterns in the data and come up with recommendations and knowledge that helped feed practice and policy, I might add as well. It's a wonderful practice-led, practice-based and practice-developed research tool that I'm sure many people are going to go on and use. It's wonderful to develop practice, but it also creates really good knowledge for the sector, knowledge that can be transferred, written about in books and written about in research papers and used in CPD sessions to enable the development of practice. That's why it's so marvellous. It also is a tool that's bonded us together because we all feel we were part of it. And it was through our rich dialogues that went on that created that tool. So that's a model and a challenge to everybody to say, what would your community of Froebelian evidence practice come up with? We didn't anticipate that this would happen. It was one of those things that emerged because good research presents you with surprising things sometimes. This tool has been a wonderful, surprising outcome, which we hope others will find useful. So yeah, a research tool and a practice tool. Thank you. Over to Jane, I think now.
Thank you very much, Chris. Wow, what an amazing evening. I was supposed to chair the whole thing and I didn't need to do a thing. I think that's what happens when you've got a wonderful team. All the parts come together into one whole. So we've probably just got 2 minutes really for a couple of questions. There was one quite early on in the chat, in the Q&A, which I want to ask. Chris said, did you plan to write a book from the beginning or did that come later during the project? Sally, did you plan to write a book right from the beginning?
To be quite honest, Chris always said we need to write a book right from the very start. As we got closer to the end, I just hoped she'd forgotten. So yeah, it was always the plan. But
I think making it happen, you know, I always had the dream that this could be and should be, because I think texts really matter and they give our work status and transferability. But producing something like that is a big undertaking, and we had to make the doing of it a joyful experience. So coming together to do joint writing was something we'll all of us remember. It bonded us together, and now we've got this collective thing we created together. So I highly recommend it. Even if you're a reluctant writer, if you get together with some pals and you've got some good things to write about, it flows.
And I think as well, in true Froebelian style, we always wrote a chapter together. There's always 2 authors for every chapter.
Yeah. Good. I think I'm going to probably pull us to a close. Would everyone like to put their camera back on just so we can see everyone before we leave? Do you know, I think it's been a really wonderful journey that you've shared tonight, but the whole process has been a wonderful journey looking at it from the outside. And I think what's really struck me, the more that I've read it and the more that I've considered it, is how it relates to Froebel's idea about humanity and the whole idea of human connection and those connections across from children to families to educators to researchers, and that common purpose of creating something that is meaningful for everyone. And I don't think you can do that through some other kind of tools like, say, AI, where there is no human connection. I think that it's something that we should treasure. It's something that is really important for our children's futures. So thank you so much for telling us all about all the lenses. I'm sure that everybody has really had their appetite whetted. And I want to say that there's been absolutely zero waste on the canopies. In the time available, they have been fully consumed. I'd like to say they had a dynamic texture, vibrant visuals, and they had a big flavour. And actually sure that everyone is feeling satisfied but hungry for more to read the book. So thank you all so much.